You think she doesn't miss you right now. That's what your mind keeps telling you, because she's posting like nothing happened, laughing, out with friends, looking better than ever. And you start questioning, did she ever care at all? But here's what most men never realize. Women don't miss you when you leave. They miss you when the noise fades. When the silence stops being a game and starts being a mirror. She doesn't crack in the first week, or the second number. She holds it together, wears the face, plays the part, until one day, something shifts. It's not when she's surrounded by attention. It's when she's surrounded by it and still feels alone. Because missing you isn't about the past. It's about what you made her feel, that no one else can replicate. This video isn't about tricks. It's about truth. And if you're the kind of man who's strong enough to hear what really happens in her head after the goodbye, then watch closely. Because we're about to walk through the exact moment she starts missing you for real. And when we're done, you won't see her silence the same way again. Before we begin, if this kind of inner power and clarity is what you're building, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to keep chasing women who only notice you when you disappear. You want to become the man who never has to disappear, to be felt. Let's get into it. Step 1. When her ego can't protect her anymore. Let's get one thing clear: she doesn't miss you right away. Not in the first few days. Not even in the first couple weeks. She's too busy proving something. To herself, to her friends, to the version of her that told herself walking away was strength. But here's what happens quietly, beneath the surface. At some point her ego gets tired. The mask slips, and she's left alone with the echo of what used to be connection. Let me tell you about Marcus. He's 46, runs a home renovation business in North Carolina. Solid guy. Built, calm, the kind of man who doesn't chase but feels everything. He'd been seeing Amanda, 33, for 6 months. There was real chemistry, fun, late nights, deep talks, but somewhere along the way, she started pulling back. Subtle at first, less responsive. Then the excuses, then the full switch up. And Marcus? He didn't react, didn't beg, didn't send late-night texts asking why. He just disappeared. Not out of pride, out of clarity. He knew chasing a woman trying to prove she doesn't need you is a game you never win. Amanda kept going like nothing happened. Posted more, smiled wider, stayed busy. But here's what she didn't expect. The silence didn't break him. It reflected her. Because now, without his presence, she didn't just feel alone. She felt exposed. The ego that once said, "He'll come back if I pull away," started whispering something darker. What if he actually meant it? And that's the crack. That's the shift. When the protective armor of her pride starts feeling more like a cage than a shield, and the harder she tries to keep it together on the outside, the louder the unrest grows on the inside. It's not about missing his body. It's about missing the mirror. Because that's what a grounded man is, a mirror. He reflects back her softness, her chaos, her depth. When that disappears, she's left with herself. And sometimes, that's the scariest part. Marcus never gloated, never punished, never made a scene. But 3 weeks later, she texted, "I've been thinking about you." Not because he chased, but because her ego couldn't keep lying. And that's what most men don't understand. Women don't crack when you shout. They crack when you don't. When your silence isn't a tactic but a truth. When you're not playing chess, you're simply done playing. And that stillness, that's what haunts her. Because if you don't need her attention to validate your presence, you just became the most dangerous kind of man. So if you're sitting there wondering when she starts missing you, it's not when you text her again. It's when her own reflection gets too loud to ignore. And if you've ever seen that shift, if you've ever felt her energy change without saying a word, drop it below. I've seen that silence hit. You're not chasing, you're just watching. And the next step, it only gets more real. Step 2. When attention feels empty. At first, she thinks she's winning. The DMs light up. The likes climb. The compliments come in waves: beautiful, fire, stunning. And for a moment, it works. She convinces herself this is better. She tells herself it's proof she's fine without you. But here's the truth. No one says out loud attention feels like validation until it doesn't. Because attention is loud, but it's not deep. And when the room goes quiet, it disappears. See, anyone can notice her, but not everyone sees her. You did. You saw the details. The way her laugh had two different versions, one for the world, one for when she was safe. You noticed the silence between her words, the shift in her energy, the way her eyes dropped when she was scared of being real. And now, she's surrounded by applause, but starving for recognition. What used to feel powerful now feels cheap, because admiration without intimacy is noise. And when you're gone, what she feels isn't just your absence. It's the absence of being understood. That's when it hits her. All the new faces, all the validation, all the attention, none of it touches her the way your presence did. Because presence doesn't have volume, it has gravity. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And when your attention is no longer freely given, when you stop being available energy, she feels the weight of that loss more than any compliment she receives. She realizes something uncomfortable. She could be admired by 100 men and still feel invisible. That's what your detachment created, not emptiness, but contrast. Now, every conversation feels a little more surface. Every date feels like performance. Every flirtation feels predictable. Because once a woman feels real connection, surface-level attention stops feeding her. That's the curse of being truly seen. Once you've had it, you can't pretend junk food is a feast. And here's where your silence becomes louder than their voices. You're not chasing. You're not competing. You're just not there. And your absence is sharper than their praise. That's when she starts thinking differently, not about what you did, but what she's lost. Not just a man, but the mirror that made her feel like a woman. A woman with layers, with emotion, with truth. And now, all she has is attention, but no intimacy, no depth, no you. If you've ever watched a woman go from fireworks to flatline, if you've ever felt your silence speak louder than her spotlight, drop it below. They looked, I saw. Let's keep going. Because next, memory starts to hit harder than reality. Step 3. When memory feels better than touch. There's a strange shift that happens in silence. At first she fills the space with plans, with people, with someone new maybe, someone who texts good mornings, who notices her outfit, who says all the right things, and for a while, it works, until it doesn't. Because eventually, the conversation starts to feel predictable. The kisses start to feel rehearsed, and her body may be touched, but her soul doesn't feel held. That's when memory sneaks in, not as nostalgia, but as contrast. Let me tell you about David. He's 52, divorced for 2 years, lives in Colorado. After years of playing it safe, he met Talia, 38, divorced, 2 kids, smart, confident, a little wild. It clicked instantly. The conversations flowed. The intimacy was unfiltered. She said he made her feel like a woman again, not just a mom, not just a project. But when things got too close, too steady, she pulled back. She said she needed space, said it was too much, too fast. David didn't beg. He said, "Take the time you need," and meant it. 3 months passed. She dated, traveled, met someone new. But one night, sitting across from a guy who checked all the boxes on paper, she felt nothing. Not because he did anything wrong, but because her body was there and her mind was with David. The memory of the way he looked at her when she wasn't trying, the way he'd pause before speaking, like her words mattered, the way he held her not to possess, but to feel. That memory? It felt warmer than the man in front of her. more alive than the touch she was receiving. And that's when she started missing him, not because she was lonely, but because she was finally quiet enough to notice the difference. See, physical touch without emotional depth is like eating candy for dinner. It satisfies something, but not the thing that truly needs feeding. And once a woman's experienced real presence, her body starts remembering what her pride wants to forget. That's when the memory becomes more intoxicating than the moment. Because it's not just about sex, it's about sensation, attention, reverence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And when her thoughts keep coloring you in warmer, deeper, slower tones, no surface-level touch can compete. It's not just that she misses your presence. It's that everything else now feels like absence. That's when memory wins. Not because you forced it, but because she let it in. If you've ever been the man she couldn't forget even after she moved on, drop it below. She touched him, but she felt me. The next part? It's when the games stop working. Let's go deeper. Step 4. When control doesn't work on you. She thought she had time. Time to stay distant, to keep you wondering, to make you prove something. Because most men do. Most men lean in harder when she leans out. They double text. They wait for the typing bubbles. They try to fix what was never broken, just shifted. But then, something different happens. You stop responding, not as a tactic, but as a truth. You're no longer playing the game. You're no longer trying to decode the delay in her replies, or the tone in her messages, or the meaning behind the silence. You're just gone. And for her, that changes everything. Because control only works on the emotionally reactive. And you're no longer reacting. What once felt like leverage now feels like a dead signal. She presses the same buttons and nothing lights up. The power dynamic flips. Not because you wrestled it from her, but because you walked away from the need to win. That's a shift most women don't expect. You see, control isn't always loud. It's often subtle. It's in the delay, the detachment, the strategic withholding. But when a man is rooted, when he no longer needs her validation to stand tall, every one of her tactics fall flat. There's a moment that comes when she realizes, he doesn't need me confused. He's not chasing clarity. He's already clear. And that's terrifying. Because she no longer has the upper hand, not because you took it, but because you stopped playing with hands altogether. That's what Stoic strength looks like. It doesn't explode. It doesn't chase. It doesn't react to pressure. It simply remains. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And when you're free from emotional dependency, free from the cycle of push-pull, free from needing to be chosen, you become immune to manipulation. She might try again. A casual message, a memory drop, a breadcrumb, but she'll feel the difference. You're not ignoring her to teach her a lesson. You're simply not enrolling in the class anymore. And when a woman realizes her power no longer lands, no longer shifts the room, she doesn't feel victorious. She feels small, not because you made her feel that way, but because, for the first time in a long time, you didn't flinch. And that's when the control begins to break. Not dramatically, not instantly, but slowly, quietly, completely. If you've ever watched someone reach for a version of you that no longer exists, drop it below. She lost control when I found peace. Let's keep moving, because next, she'll see something even more disorienting. You didn't just detach. You didn't retaliate either. Step 5. When you detach without revenge. There's a moment that changes everything, not for you, but for her. It's not when you leave. It's not when you get quiet. It's when you leave. Without bitterness. You don't lash out. You don't block. You don't start posting quotes about self-worth or betrayal. You simply stop trying. And that kind of detachment, that's not weakness. That's power. Let me tell you about Eric. He's 44, a personal trainer in Florida. Calm guy, quiet strength. He dated Alina, 35, a graphic designer, smart, charming, emotionally volatile. They had fire, passion, but too often that fire became smoke, unclear boundaries, power struggles, silent treatments. Then one day, after another emotional spiral, she pulled the same move, went distant, waited for him to break first. But this time, he didn't. He didn't ghost her. He didn't guilt her. He just stayed silent, not to win, not to punish, just because there was nothing left to say. Weeks passed. She expected anger, drama, a reaction she could respond to. But all she got was peace. And that peace, that's what messed with her most. Because when you detach without revenge, you do something no one expects. You remove their excuse. There's no outburst to blame, no mess to clean up, no reason to make you the villain. Just stillness, just space, just consequences. It's Stoicism in motion, not suppression, but sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius put it clearly: the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. And when a man walks away without becoming bitter, he becomes unforgettable. Because you didn't collapse. You didn't need closure. You didn't need to prove you were right. You let the silence speak for you. That kind of maturity doesn't scream, it whispers, and she hears it louder than any angry voicemail or pity post. Alina told Eric months later that she kept waiting for him to react. And when he never did, when he never came back with accusations or emotional weapons, she started to realize she hadn't just lost a man. She'd lost a man who could have destroyed her pride, but chose not to. That absence of revenge, that's what echoed longest. Because when you leave without the need to hurt, she doesn't feel victorious. She feels exposed. You didn't need her downfall to rise. You rose quietly. And that silence, that's the thing she replays. Not the last text, not the fight, but the moment you stopped participating. If you've ever walked away, not out of anger, but out of clarity, drop it below. No revenge, just release. What comes next? It's when the world gets quiet, and she finally hears herself. Let's keep going. Step 6. When the world goes quiet. There's a moment that hits her harder than she ever expected. Not when you leave, not when you stop texting, not even when she sees you've moved on. It's when the world finally goes quiet. The messages slow down. The likes dry up. The flirty distractions lose their flavor. And the sound of her own thoughts, raw, unfiltered, unescapable, comes flooding in. This is when reality hits. Not all at once, but in waves. The kind of waves you can't surf, only surrender to. At first, she filled the silence with noise. More conversations, more attention, more content, more validation. Because when a woman is in control, silence is the enemy. It reminds her she's not. But here's the thing. Silence doesn't shout. It reveals. And in that silence, you become louder than ever. Not through words, not through presence, through absence. Your silence isn't passive. It's powerful. It's not about ignoring her, it's about not chasing her. And that changes the game. Because now she's left with the mirror. And in that mirror, she sees the one thing she's been avoiding. Herself. You see, the Stoics were right. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." In modern relationships, that silence is not just about listening to others, it's about finally hearing yourself. And now, so does she. She hears the echoes of what you used to say, the calm in your tone, the way you didn't try to win her because you were already winning within. She remembers how she used to feel when she was with you, emotionally safe, energetically alive, and completely disarmed. But now, there's no one left to project onto, no one to blame, no one to argue with. Just the quiet. And in that quiet, the real feelings rise. This is when she starts to miss you, not because she's lonely, but because she starts to see you clearly. Not as the man she thought you were in moments of frustration, but as the man who never stopped being himself, even when she pulled away. Your silence becomes a symbol of strength. It reminds her that you didn't beg, you didn't react, you didn't chase chaos. You walked away, not with rage, but with reverence for yourself. And now, that quiet space you created is the very thing she craves. Not more noise, not more men. Just that feeling she had when she was next to a man who was rooted so deeply that the world could spin and he wouldn't flinch. And it's in this part of the timeline where her defenses crack. The posts slow down. The smiles look rehearsed. The new guy feels hollow. The attention feels cheap. Because it's not just about being wanted. She's always been wanted. It's about being met. And when she starts realizing no one else is meeting her where you did, the silence becomes a teacher. This is where her missing you turns into more than a feeling. It becomes a confession, even if she never says it out loud. She starts to crave not the drama, but the peace. Not the thrill, but the truth. Not the chase, but the center. And here's the secret most men miss. She doesn't miss the man who chased her. She misses the man who didn't need to. Because that man didn't speak over her emotions, he outlasted them. He didn't try to fix her storms, he let them pass, untouched. And in the silence, he became unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are clear, grounded, and strong, your silence will say everything for you. You don't need to explain why you stopped reaching out. You don't need to justify why you let go. Your stillness speaks louder than any closing line. And now when her world gets quiet, she starts remembering. Not the words, not the texts, not the gifts. She remembers the way she felt in your presence. Like a woman next to a man who didn't need her to be anything other than herself. And the silence you left behind, it's no longer empty. It's sacred. And it's where she'll go back to again and again, trying to feel what only you ever gave her. Step 7. When your silence becomes a standard. There's a moment when she realizes your silence isn't a tactic. It's a way of life. And worse for her, it's working. She's used to noise, emotional chaos, men who come back just to explain themselves, who beg to be heard, who fight for one last word. But you went silent and stayed there. Not out of resentment, not as a game, but because you've leveled up, and suddenly your stillness becomes something she can't unsee. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's rare. Let me give you a real example. Jake, 42, had been through hell in a long, unstable situationship with Marisa, 36. She was intense, magnetic, unpredictable, the kind of woman who drew you in and pushed you away in the same breath. Every argument ended with her silence. Every silence ended with him crawling back. Until one day, he didn't. He took the emotion out of it. He stopped trying to win. He didn't post quotes. He didn't block her. He didn't even talk about her. He just vanished emotionally and spiritually. Weeks passed, then months. One night, Marisa saw Jake at a small wine bar downtown. He didn't look angry. He didn't look broken. He looked centered. She watched him laugh with friends, fully alive. No trace of bitterness. No signal of damage. And it hit her. Jake's silence wasn't an absence. It was a message. He wasn't avoiding her. He had outgrown her. See, a woman knows when a man's quiet because he's hurting. But when he's quiet because he's elevated, that's terrifying. Because now the standards shift. She starts comparing every new man to that energy. The men who over-explain, too needy. The ones who blow up when ignored, too reactive. The ones who play the same game she used to, exhausting. None of them have that still power she felt from you. And the worst part? You didn't teach her with lectures, you taught her with distance. That's Stoicism in action. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In your case, the best response to being discarded was to become undeniable, not by force, but by focus. You built your life. You reclaimed your center. You became the man who doesn't just handle silence, he chooses it. And now she feels that standard like a pressure on her chest. Not because you're punishing her, but because now she finally sees the difference between a man who reacts and a man who responds with stillness. She sees the difference between a man who wants to be chosen and one who chooses himself. Your silence has now evolved into something more powerful than words. Presence. Even when you're not around, she feels you. Not because you're haunting her, but because what you were offering wasn't loud, it was stable. And now, every little drama, every performative relationship she entertains, it feels shallow by comparison. She didn't just lose you, she lost peace. And when a woman feels peace, even for a short while, it ruins chaos for her. So when she talks to friends, it's never about how great the new guy is. It's about how they don't make her feel the same. She won't say your name. She may even pretend she's fine. But inside, she's measuring them against a silence they can't recreate. That's what happens when your absence turns into a benchmark. That's what happens when your silence becomes a standard. Have you ever walked away so completely, so calmly, that she couldn't fill your space no matter how many tried? Say it in the comments. My silence changed the room. The next step, it's when she finally breaks because no noise makes her feel what you did without saying a word. Let's go there. Step 8, when she feels watched but not wanted. At first, your attention was her mirror. She studied your gaze, measured your reactions, fed on your desire, and for a while it was enough. Just knowing you were watching gave her power. But then something changed. You didn't stop noticing her, you just stopped needing her. Your gaze shifted from desire to detachment. You didn't flinch when she looked good. You didn't chase when she went silent. You didn't play the game. And now she feels it. She's still seen, but she's no longer wanted. That subtle difference, it's devastating. Because here's the truth. Most women don't crave love. Not first. They crave significance. They want to feel that their presence pulls you in, that your world becomes sharper, hungrier when they're in it. But when a man detaches with clarity, when he can look without reaching, observe without reacting, he breaks that illusion. Suddenly, your attention feels like a mirror she can't control. And that makes her uncomfortable. She'll ask herself, why isn't he flirting? Why doesn't he want me back? Why can't I make him move? And slowly, the game she used to enjoy posting that perfect story, walking past you with someone new, casually referencing old memories, starts to feel pointless because she knows you see it all. But she also knows it doesn't move you. And that's what burns deeper than rejection. See, Stoicism teaches us the power of restraint, not as suppression, but as sovereignty. Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Your desire, once externalized, is now internal. You've reclaimed your gaze. You decide where it goes. You decide what moves you. And nothing she does, no post, no story, no new guy can pull it back. So now she's left in a strange place. She still feels your presence, still notices when you're near, but there's no emotional bridge left. Just the weight of being seen, but no longer desired. And that kind of awareness, it triggers reflection. Because now she has to ask the hard questions. Did you ever truly need her? Or was she just the one who needed to be needed? The absence of your want becomes a spotlight on her insecurity. She wanted to be admired, but not if it came without pursuit. She wanted to be desired, but only if it meant she was still in control. Now she's getting attention, but none of the power she's used to. And she doesn't know what to do with that. So she may try harder. More polished photos, louder stories, subtle shade masked as casual conversation. But every time you don't flinch, every time you nod politely and move on, every time you see her but don't signal interest, she spirals a little deeper. Because your silence is no longer just absence. It's a refusal to validate. And in a world where validation is currency, you've become the one thing she can't afford to lose: indifference. That indifference, stoically earned, is not cold. It's clean. It says, I see you, I honor what was, but I don't need what no longer serves. And when a woman who once thrived on being wanted starts to feel like just another presence in your peripheral vision, that's when the echo begins. It's not that she misses being loved, she misses being important. And once she realizes she's no longer the center of your attention, but just a passing detail, that's when it hits. She lost more than you. She lost the one man who could see her clearly and still walk away without bitterness. That clarity is haunting. So if you've ever been in that place where your gaze lost its hunger but kept its power, drop it below. I saw her. I didn't need her. The next step? It's when she stops performing and starts regretting. Let's move on. Step 9. When she realizes you've changed. There's a moment that hits different. Not when she misses you, not when she wonders where you are, but when she realizes you've changed. And not the kind of change she expected, like bitterness, coldness, or pretending you're unbothered. No, you changed in a way that's worse for her ego and better for your soul. Let me give you a real story. David, 51, had been in a slow-burn relationship with Natalie, 43. They had that classic dynamic: on again, off again. Natalie always had the upper hand. She knew David's triggers. She knew what to say to get him emotional, to make him come back, to make him chase. Until one day, he didn't. They had one last argument, nothing big, just familiar. But something about it snapped the cycle for David. He didn't yell, he didn't beg. He just said, "All right," and walked away. Weeks passed. Natalie expected the usual, a late-night message, a check-in text, some reaction. Nothing came. 3 months later, they bumped into each other at a friend's birthday dinner. She expected awkwardness, maybe even tension. But David was different. He looked her in the eye, smiled, and asked how she was doing. No shade, no passive aggressiveness, no trace of the old David who needed her to validate him. And that's when it hit her. She didn't recognize him anymore, because he wasn't playing the same role. And the thing is, women can feel this shift instantly, because most men don't actually change. They pretend. They post gym selfies. They talk tough. But underneath, they're still waiting for her to come back. But when a man really transforms not just his habits, but his presence, she knows it. Your voice sounds different. Your silence feels firmer. Your energy doesn't lean in anymore, it stands tall. And for her, that's unsettling, because now she has to ask the one question she's been avoiding. Would he even want me back? When you were reactive, she could manage you. When you were emotional, she could predict you. But now, you're a mystery, not because you're hiding, but because you've evolved. And that changes everything. Because here's the brutal truth. Most of the time, she doesn't miss who you were. She misses being the one who could reach that version of you. But now, you're out of emotional reach. You're not punishing her. You're not ignoring her. You're simply not the same man she left behind. And that realization is far more painful than any silence. You didn't post quotes about growth. You didn't tell mutual friends about how much you've changed. You just became. Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's what you did. You got clear on the man you wanted to be, and you built him, brick by brick. Without her, now she's left wondering, what would it even feel like to be close to you again? Because here's what's happening in her mind. She can't predict you. She can't control you. She can't shake the thought that someone else might be seeing this new version of you for the first time, without all the baggage. And that stings deeper than missing you. It's not just loss, it's irrelevance. When a woman realizes the version of you she had is no longer available, not because you hate her, but because you've grown past her. That's when the grief truly sets in. It's not loud, it's not messy, it's internal. Because now, every memory she has of you is outdated. And the new version, she doesn't have access. That's power. Not dominance, not ego, just growth. Quiet, steady, unshakable growth. So if you've been through that shift, if you've become the man that no longer needs to be explained, only experienced, drop this in the comments. She knew. I changed. We're almost there. Let's finish strong. Step 10. When she misses feeling feminine. Here's the truth that cuts deeper than any breakup. A woman doesn't just miss you. She misses who she was when she was with you. She misses the feeling of being completely in her feminine energy, not having to lead, manage, fix, or chase. Just be, just feel, just rest. That's the version of herself she accessed around you. And when that's gone, it's not you she aches for, it's that softness you allowed her to unlock. When a grounded, masculine man shows up truly rooted in himself, he does more than create chemistry. He creates safety, not the soft, overly agreeable kind, the deep, primal safety that allows a woman to surrender, to stop performing, to feel like she can let go and still be held without words, without conditions. And when that safety disappears, it leaves a void she doesn't know how to fill. At first, she'll try to distract herself. Go out more, scroll endlessly, enter a new relationship. Maybe even one with a man who seems emotionally available. But something feels off. He's too careful, too validating, too eager to please. She doesn't feel held, she feels handled. Because being seen isn't the same as being known, and being told she's beautiful isn't the same as feeling safe to be vulnerable. Now she finds herself doing more of the emotional work, planning everything, checking in, guiding conversations. She feels like she's driving the car while the passenger just smiles and nods. And at night, when she lays in bed staring at the ceiling, she realizes she misses being the woman she could be around you. The woman who didn't have to be so strong, who didn't feel the pressure to be in control, who didn't have to lead all the time. Because you weren't chaotic, you were stable. Your presence didn't demand attention, it created space. A space where she didn't need to be perfect, where her wild edges weren't criticized, where her silence wasn't a threat, it was accepted. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." You lived by that. You were that retreat, not just for yourself, but for her. And here's the twist. She probably never said thank you for that. Because at the time, she didn't even realize what she had. You weren't loud. You weren't flashy. You didn't play games. You simply showed up with clarity. You led without controlling. You listened without fixing. You stayed calm while she tested, pushed, and twisted. And now? Now she's surrounded by men who can't carry that energy. They react. They escalate. They fold. She's constantly playing referee instead of being the muse. She may post online about how empowered she feels, about how she doesn't need a man, about how healing looks like bubble baths and vacations. But late at night, the ache shows up, not for the relationship, but for the feeling of being truly feminine. Not in the Instagram way, not in the divine goddess aesthetic, but in the raw, beautiful, emotional, sensual form that only reveals itself when a man is strong enough to hold it without breaking. And you didn't just let her feel that. You awakened it in her. That's not something she can replicate with a checklist or a dating app. That's why your absence keeps showing up in her mind. Not because you were perfect, but because you made her feel like a woman in a way that no one else has been able to. So, yes, she misses you. But deeper than that, she misses the version of herself she got to be when you were around. And that's the kind of missing that lingers. Because it's not about love lost. It's about identity lost. And once she feels it slipping away, she'll search for it everywhere. but she won't find it, because it wasn't about what you said. It was about how you made her feel. And that, my friend, is a standard no one else can fake. Before you go, let me ask you this. How many men do you know who actually understand this? Not surface level advice, not tricks, but the real shifts in energy, presence, and masculinity that actually make a woman feel something deeper. If this hits something in you, if you know you're that man, or you're becoming him, then you belong here. So hit subscribe. This isn't just a channel. It's a space where we speak like men, think like Stoics, and move like we know our value. Thanks for spending this time with me today. Appreciate your presence truly, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Stay sharp, stay grounded, stay you.